You're listening to Addie's Radio on the Vets on Media Network.
Good morning. Thanks for tuning in to At Ease Radio. I'm your host, Jesse Gerritsen, and today joining me is Matt Schwab, as usual, and also Stevie Ann Petite. And she is a Navy veteran and an author. Stevie, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. This is really exciting.
Yeah. So tell us about the book you wrote. What the name and...
Sure. It's titled "Egos Are Like Farts."
Okay.
It's a comedic approach to conscious living. There's a lot of noteworthy authors right now that are coming to an awareness and kind of blasting it out there that the ego is different. It's distinct from who we truly are, and that it actually separates us from one another, and having that consciousness, that like connectedness with each other. And that material can be wonderful, but it also can be kind of heavy. So the idea of egos are like farts is making these comedic comparisons so that in everyday life we can actually use a funny metaphor, kind of observe it in a harmless way, which in turn it distances us from our own egos, and then we realize that we're on the outside looking in and we are distinct and different. We're separate from our egos. That's simply a part of the human experience, or the humor experience, I like to call it, because it's just, this is so comical.
Right.
So, and if we can see it as and take a comedic approach, it's a little less intrusive, and it's kind of making enlightenment a little lighter.
Absolutely.
So,
I love it.
Thanks.
I love it. So what inspired you to write this?
I definitely have to acknowledge that my husband and I, we started, we both got out of the military, he a year before I did, and we started watching some documentaries. It was kind of a process. We started eating cleaner, watching some documentaries. Ultimately, I found myself on the verge of this kind of awareness, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. I was starting to build this self-esteem, and I couldn't really explain it, but it was unique. And so I found myself in front of a bookshelf at a bookstore, and I was in the self-help section, and I was looking at purpose because I just got out of the military. I certainly wanted to find out, what's my next mission?
Right.
What's my purpose? And sure as day, there was Eckhart Tolle, who's a famous author now, and he had A New Earth. And in it, he he just perfectly describes and defines the ego as he perceives it, and it really resonated with me. And I think that's all this work. It's whatever resonates with you to get you where you are. You know, perhaps all of it's correct, perhaps it's just the truth for some, but his work really spoke to me. It is a very heavy work, or at least it was for me. But there were these moments as I was listening to his audio about the ego being different from us and distinct from us, and, in a sense, living with it, but not for it. And that just really, it spoke to me. So then from there it was, okay, how can I incorporate this in my style, which is always cracking jokes?
Yeah.
I needed a way to lighten it up because I'm not used to heavy material like that. And one day in class, I go to the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. It's an incredible school that focuses on finding all of our own unique gifts and graces, and then using it to serve as an instrument, not an ego, in the healing of others. So the theme kept coming up, and as I'm at school, we're talking about not being an ego. We're talking about how do we serve selflessly. And who illustrated the book, Brett Black, a good friend of mine, we were just having banter at the table, during a break or something, and I just jokingly kind of said, yeah, egos are like farts right now, and just we're trying to build this conversation and have some laughs and stuff. And then when I realized how many ways the two compare, and how easy it was to incorporate that into life so that I could separate mine from myself, my true self, capital S self. There was a lot of peace there, a lot of inner peace, which similar to farts too. If you can release both, you find inner peace, both physically and now spiritually. So that was like a huge awakening for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I felt the need to write it because I guess I was just more...
Because you were inspired.
I was inspired, and I thought if just one person picks up this book and goes later to the supermarket or something, right? And they observe the ego in another person, right?
Yeah.
Someone that's maybe impatient or what have you. Instead of letting that bother them and acknowledging, just observing from this non-judgmental place that person has their own story, they're going through their own human experience, but to separate from that and acknowledge that it was the ego in themselves that was perceiving the ego in another person, that was identifying and labeling what they perceive to be going on. There's so much peace that comes there in that awareness. It's like you're not bothered by it anymore because you acknowledge that it's almost like this little chip on your shoulder that's talking in your ear. You're like, okay, I've got this. I don't need your perception right now. But so it's like if one person could just see that they were perhaps crop dusting and creating this terrible space that, their ego was coming across and polluting their area, right? Giving them that awareness, it's so exciting because they could experience hopefully what I have in the moments that I've done the same. So
where you start to see people as a mirror of yourself.
Yes.
And so when you see the ego in somebody else, or when something else annoys you about another person, turning that around back on yourself and saying, well, what is it about myself that I feel? What beliefs do I have about myself that I'm letting this get to me? Because they're not the ones that are causing me to be annoyed. They're not the ones that are causing me to be frustrated or angry. I'm the one that's causing myself to be that. Yes. So taking a look at that, and I think that's what's so cool about your work. Now, you were saying, talking about comparing farts and egos, and I wanted to hear some of your comparisons.
Sure. Okay, so there's a couple of really funny chapters, and I have to say again, Brett's illustrations, they really bring that comedic aspect because the writing's comical, but the pictures themselves, I think, allow people to get these images and just see how lighthearted and how comical this really is. One of the chapters is Rosy Cheeks, and it's a little bit about how we can become very embarrassed by our egos and how those egos come across, how we expel them, if you will, similar to farts. So it's like you get real embarrassed perhaps by what you've said or how you've bursted with your information that you're sharing with everyone.
So
it could be...
Give an example of that.
Okay, well, let's say you're at perhaps a function at your workplace, and someone maybe says something to you, and you get all these... You attach and you identify and you label your perception of things. And then you start to just rant and you go off in this tangent about your belief system around it, your perception, and why you're either better than or not good enough for that situation. You're either the victim or the valor. You're getting caught up in this ego story. Well, oftentimes we might say way more than we intended to. And then we wind up blushing, we're embarrassed, and that kind of goes into the next chapter, which is how do you clear the air?
Right.
There's things that we let our egos take over, and then once they do, there's no putting that back to the origin it came from, I mean, it's out there, and so we've either embarrassed ourselves or maybe embarrassed another person, and then when that happens, much like a fart, everyone's running for the exit doors. And it's like, how do we clear the air? How do we could say things from an egotistical standpoint that affect relationships for years. There's family members that don't talk to each other for decades over one egotistical episode that perhaps could have been aired with a little bit more, conscious
awareness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I call conscious crop dusting. Like we do have to live with our egos. They're part of the human experience. We don't have to live for them, though. So even if we're going to share some of our intent and some of our perceptions, we can expel it consciously.
Yeah.
Perhaps alone, or perhaps with a trusted friend who's going to hold that space for us.
And he's going to be able to laugh about it, and then and say, okay, let's not make a big deal of this, but someone who you can, another chapter, we talk about, how often is it that when someone passes gas, they claim it? Unless I guess you're coming from an egotistical standpoint, like that was mine. Yeah.
It's so often that with egos, we are very quick to blame and point the finger at others, just like flatulence, but rarely do we own up like, hey man, that was me.
That was me.
That attitude back there, that whole fight back there, all that turmoil, that was me, man. Like, I got to own my piece in that.
Right.
So,
taking responsibility for your piece. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So quick to claim.
Yeah.
Not to blame is the ideal, as opposed to being quick to blame and not to claim. To just own our own, and having a trusted allies that you can just release that with, you know, and they can call you on it and be like, that's stinking thinking. You know what I mean? Like, we got to get you out of that, and really good friends I've found, I can be expelling some attitude or some beliefs, some perceptions, as I think things appear, and again, it's just my ego that's labeling things, trying to identify. And I've got buddies that'll tell me, like, we got to get the hell out of here. Let's run for the exit, because this whole place is toxic. Like, you can't think that way. You can't operate from that place because it's not conscious. So a lot of the chapters are just really comedic comparisons, and they do have a bunch of, little examples. And I'm sure it's so easy to come up with your own examples just in everyday life. It's easy to go, my goodness, that's an instance right there where someone, in a sense, sharded. They think you have your ego under control, and you go off on this tangent, and you've got diarrhea of the mouth. The comparisons are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that the work isn't exceptionally powerful. It is. But if we can comedic approach to it, it's harmless. It's like that much more exciting to take on and pursue.
Because I think one of the hard parts of this work is in taking responsibility for yourself, taking responsibility for your stinking thinking, as is that it is very difficult to look at yourself and say, I made these choices to be like this. I made these choices, and so why I love this metaphor is because it's not taking it too seriously. It's like, I made those just like I made my farts, just like I made, like
I digested all the information the way that I digested it, and here's how it's coming out.
And here's how it's coming out, and I have a mirror, and
totally.
And so it's great, and it's giving you that option between playing the role of victim, like, oh, this is my sob story, this is me, this is, or do I take responsibility, and in that responsibility find the freedom to be who I am, be the person that I know I can be. Yeah. So
I'll even read like a bit from the intro, because I think it'll really hone in. This is just part of the human experience. So the very intro, in the very beginning, I acknowledge that, I have my own, and I have to preface everything with, this is my perception, this is my ego and how I'm perceiving this. So the intro says, "Psst, your ego is showing. I know because mine just pointed it out. Haven't we all declared disgust in another person that was mid-ego trip, or agreed in catty conversation that a distant third party has a huge ego? To date, it has been few and far between, only this past year actually, that I have heard a statement around ego that actually labels itself as a positive influence. The ego is defined as our self-image, our self-worth, self-esteem, our individuality. Many of us believe the ego is our sense of self, our character and our personality, who we are. But perhaps letting that go and inviting that the ego is distinct from us is one of the easiest and quickest ways to reach enlightenment, to live with it as opposed to living for it. My point here is that the ego can be perceived as either good or bad, but time need not be spent on defining and analyzing such. As a matter of fact, it is the ego in us that thrives on this identity and labeling, imagining, if you will, that our bodies are vessels, merely here for the human experience. I'm sorry, I lost my place, but that's all right. I'll just go off the cuff. The idea is like our bodies are these vessels, and we're just kind of navigating through, trying to find our purposeful paths, if we will. So here's another metaphor, right?
Yeah.
And the ego is like this incessant GPS that just is constantly telling us where to go, how to get there, where we should have turned, and possibly giving us wrong directions based on old, outdated information. It's our perceptions.
Right.
So, and we may have perceived things wrong. So if we could just come to the conclusion, or just even invite the idea, amongst many other ideas, whatever works for each individual person, but invite the idea that the ego, it just comes with the car. It just comes with our human vessels. It's part of the skin suit, the God pod, whatever you want to call it, that we're scooting around in. It just comes with it. It is not who we are. And in those moments of identifying that we're distinct and different from it, and finding ways to maybe mute the GPS or tune it out rather, and just kind of trust our gut and like our knowing, our capital K knowing that we're on our purposeful path, we can navigate that ourselves in that distance from the ego.
Right.
That's powerful. It's transformational.
Absolutely. Real quick, can you tell us, so apart from the ego, well, we're about to go on break in like 4 minutes, so when we get back, we'll actually get into this. But so apart from the ego, like you kept saying, like your true self, let's talk about that. Like who are we really if we're not our ego?
And again, I can preface this with, this is what I have experienced, that I, on levels I can't even explain with the human words that were given, this is what I've experienced. But in these moments that I am able to, on the outside, look in and distinctly separate myself from the thoughts that are generating and happening, I feel such a sense of perfection, and I feel precious and priceless, and it's unlike any worldly claim or compliment. It's a knowing in your gut. It's like this, it's just remarkable. It's like by grace, this incredible feeling that overwhelms me, and I know that that's my true self. That's my essence, that I'm this perfect, precious being. And then in that, there's a knowing too, though, that I'm connected. I truly believe we're all connected. There's this knowing that we're all one.
Yeah.
Capital O, one. And then it's easy to be compassionate with like-minded and fellow beings, even if not like-minded.
Yeah, it's easy to be compassionate with anyone.
Right.
That's a beautiful note. And when we get back, we'll continue that, and we'll kind of expand it into how we can use this in our everyday lives. Thank you, Stevie, and we're listening to At Ease.
Breaker, one nine. How about that bandage? You got some ears on, son?
Have you ever wanted to be a truck driver? If so, pay attention. If not, pay attention anyway. Southwest Truck Driver Training offers everything you need to get started. You can get hired before you begin training. They've got GI Bill approved training facilities, day, night, or weekend programs to fit your busy schedule. And if you have any questions, no sweat. They've got veteran supportive campuses with veterans on staff to serve you. And on top of that, they have lifetime job placement assistance. Put the pedal to the metal. Call Southwest Truck Driver Training today.
Everyone's going to need an attorney at some point in life. I'm no different. Hey everyone, it's James from Vets On. Whether it was my last will and testament before deployment or my ongoing custody battle for my children during my divorce, I needed help, so I lawyered up. If you need help, I urge you to contact Capstrom Law Firm. Capstrom Law Firm in Springfield, Missouri services clients throughout the state in criminal law, personal injury, and family law. With over 13 years practicing law, Tom Capstrom understands both law and court procedures and how stressful they can be. Let Tom Capstrom Law Firm and his dedicated staff take the stress and worry out of a difficult situation by calling him today. We feel so strongly about the work that Tom and his staff are doing that he'll be a monthly guest on the show. Tom is a veteran and a listener, for God's sake, so you know the guy is solid and will fight for you. Give Tom a call today by calling 417-864-0552 or email Tom at capstromlaw.com. And don't forget to tell him that Vets On sent you.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertising.
Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Are you or someone you know suffering from eczema, diabetes, or vitamin deficiencies? Then I can share with you something to help remedy that with Health and Wellness. It can be a business plan too, which is a great opportunity to meet and interact with all types of people who care about changing lives. So when you are ready to make a difference, call Jamie at 602-295-9969. That's 602-295-9969.
Hey everyone, it's Adam from Vets On. Are you or someone you know looking for employment? Then look no further than iVetX. iVetX is placing veterans with the right hiring companies. Join their mission in putting veterans in inspiring careers with ensured success. Access their national pipeline of military talent for companies. All veterans are pre-screened for 55 soft skill sets, 800 clarification types, education, experience, salary range, and so much more. iVetX can help you find the perfect job to veteran match. Your skills are based on what's needed for success in that job. If you're a hiring company or a veteran looking for your next career, then get started today and go to www.ivetx.com. iVetX, bridging the employer-veteran gap by putting Americans' veterans to work today.
Welcome back to At Ease. Thanks for tuning in. And we are talking to Stevie Ann Petit about why farts are like egos. So I wanted to get a little bit back into your background. Tell us a little bit about your military experience. What has been your journey to get you to where you are now? I think
that is interesting. Okay, so I served for 11 and a half, almost 12 years in the United States Navy as a military police officer. I joined when I was 17, did a lot, experienced a lot, had a lot of great mentors. But I did separate honorably a little less than a year ago. July 10th will be my 1 year out. And that's why this is also divine, too, because we're always processing stuff. I mean, this is the first I've really even spoke of it, is going to be right now. So, but it's that, in that vulnerability, excuse me, it's that vulnerability with each other and that, I don't know, just showing up as we show up, and then things come up, and hey, it's up. So let's talk about it.
It's in the room. It's out of the
out
of the bag.
Here we go. Here we go. I let it rip.
Yeah, right.
So basically, about a year ago, or a year and a half ago rather, my husband had already transitioned out, and he did 10 also as military police, and he and I started. We started eating cleaner and doing some other stuff because he became a personal trainer and a licensed nutritionist and all this other cool stuff that does play a part, I believe, in conscious awareness. And we can revisit that if you'd like. But we started to do all these different things that were centered around self, educating ourselves and things like that. And when I saw him transition out, there was a distinct growth in him that was kind of what you hope for as an individual. Like you and it's not that we couldn't have done that in the service. He and I needed to separate from the service to experience that. That's just our journey. It is what it is,
Right.
But seeing him transition out and seeing this growth happening, it really motivated me to find the same. And I realized that I was very bitter. And I don't know what stories I've really told myself. I think I told myself stories that I was a female in a male-dominated rate. I was really well received, actually. Looking back, I was really well received. I had great peers, proteges, junior troops, mentors, upper echelon. But in all that, too, every day that I was in, I was so spread thin. I was trying so hard to find a sense of self and accomplishment, and I was spread thin between all these collateral duties and my primary duties, and the military kind of has this saying, hurry up and wait. We were always on to the next big event, and we were busting our butts trying to get stuff done, and then there was no real acknowledgement. And I don't even think that it was because our upper echelon didn't care to. I think it's because they were on the same struggle of filling all these agendas and things, and basically my worth boiled down to this piece of paper every year that was a performance and evaluation report. And I found myself just so reliant upon that piece of paper to tell me of what value I was.
How good you should feel about yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And so my ego was constantly labeling and identifying back and forth like a pendulum this game between self-loathing and self-righteous. I'm better than that peer. I should have got better marks. Well, I'm not as good as so-and-so, so I'm not going to get that advancement recommendation.
Right.
I constantly stayed in this place of either self-loathing or self-righteousness. There was no in-between. And it was like that. I was hyper vigilant my entire time in. I mean, that's all I remember. I don't remember a downtime, a moment of self-acknowledgement or awareness or feeling that precious perfection that I was saying earlier. Like I was not connected to myself. And I didn't know what it meant to be connected to self. I just knew that I had it. I had enough, and I needed to give
You just knew
something
that you
a
were
shot.
you knew enough. It sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, it sounds like you weren't connected, but you knew enough to know that you weren't connected to yourself. Like,
oh yeah.
Like you knew yourself enough to know that you weren't connected to it.
Right. I mean, I would even try to give myself pats on the back for certain things.
Yeah.
And I don't know, perhaps the ego in me, that mind chatter, it wouldn't even allow it.
Yeah.
It would not even allow it. It thought, okay, well, still, you've got other projects and you could have done it better this way and you could have presented this better. Or it was this, I'd be phony. I'd be kind of cool with my peers, but deep down I was so competitively trying to get one up on them. I mean, I found myself brown-nosing and just being a yes person, taking on way too many assignments in an attempt to get a piece of paper that would validate that I was worth something. And so, yeah, I was disconnected to self. And even though I didn't know the answers, I knew that that was not it for me anymore.
Right.
And I didn't dismiss the idea of coming back in or going reserves or what have you. I mean, shoot, it hasn't even been a year yet that I've been out. But it's been a lifetime, it feels like. There's such a knowing and an understanding of how precious we all are. I have this absolute understanding that the military served me too, just as much as I served her. She served me too, and I got all these wonderful things, education, and the experiences. And it's a tough place to be, though. It's a tough place to work.
Right.
And I feel as though, and this is where the processing comes in, because I've somewhat turned my back. I'm excited to celebrate my 1 year out, but in this very moment, I'm realizing how okay I am with everything that's happened exactly the way it has. And it's because I have that connectedness to self. I don't have to identify with anything from the past, the future. All I have to do is identify with this present moment. And in this present moment, I'm having a conscious conversation with another fellow being for the greater good of humanity.
Right, absolutely.
That's
beautiful.
Yeah, that's
Beautiful.
Kick butt right there. So it's, and everything brought us to exactly this moment. And so there's this peace, this inner peace and knowingness that comes from just understanding that everything works the way it does, and that the ego, that constant judging of whether or not we're good enough or better than, like we're distinct and different from that.
Yeah, and something so much deeper. Now, what advice would you have for somebody that is going through, that maybe is in the military or is going through something similar, where they're looking for external things to feel good about themselves internally, and they're kind of searching for all these different answers. They can't find it here, they can't find it there, they can't find it there.
I believe the answers are within ourselves. I love the idea of taking a comedic approach. I love laughter. Who doesn't?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so honestly, what I would contribute to conscious living, hope that folks will try it on and see if it resonates with them, is to do just as the book says. The different chapters give different examples and comedic comparisons, and if we could just observe from a non-judgmental place, first the ego and others, because even though that seems kind of counterintuitive, it's with that acknowledgement, that awareness, that compassion comes for them, because you realize that they're struggling with the same battle that the rest of us are.
Right.
Then we can reflect, right, and see that, what is it about this that I can relate to.
Right.
And then we realize,
why is this triggering something in me?
Right. And what is my ego saying right now about this?
Right.
What is my ego saying about the lady at the checkout stand that's taking forever? The guy that's tailgating me right now?
Right.
Right. Like, what is my ego saying right now about that? And then that split second, that very moment that you observe and you acknowledge that your ego has this chatter and you're hearing the chatter,
right.
You're actually observing the chatter.
Right.
That's it. You're distinct from it. You're different from it. You're separate from it.
Right.
And you're the outsider looking in, and you can acknowledge in those moments that that's not who you are. And that's the thing, is we only have the present moment.
Right.
Even the ego can attach to the killing of the ego.
Right.
The distancing of the ego, because that's when we maybe perhaps get holier than thou and we think, okay, I'm going to be conscious and enlightened all the time. That's great, but I think that was your ego talking.
Yeah.
And the only reason I would perceive that is because my ego has done the same. I've acknowledged my own ego try to kind of latch on to that identity that, oh, we're enlightened beings. And I'm like, who's we? Get out of here, man.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I need to focus just on the present moment, and that's all we have. And we can't get...
And on how you're feeling. I mean, we're really only in control of how we're feeling. And I love what you were saying about stinking thinking and being the observer. Like, is this thinking about the woman in the checkout line or the guy that's tailgating me? Is this helping me? Is this making me feel good? Because if it's not, then it's stinking thinking and it's a fart, and I can laugh about it and have some compassion for the other people, realize that they're going through something, give some compassion towards myself, and then smile.
And it's comical. I mean, seriously, why do we have farts? I mean, come on. Like, I get it. It's to release, right?
Right.
Well, perhaps the ego's the same. I don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I found one way that works for me, and the hopes is that it'll work for other folks. Even if just one person can experience one time the feelings I felt when I'm able to subtract that connectedness to the ego and just go, you know what? Listen to my ego right now. This is out of control. And not even being upset at it. It's not good or bad. I mean, perhaps even the ego in us motivates us to get books written, right?
Yeah.
This wanting to be a helper. But really, we have to not attach ourselves to anything. We just have to come from this place of true selfless service, and we need to give that to ourselves before anyone else. So, aside from finding comedic work or finding work that resonates with you, some people like heavy work. They like workbooks. They like to do worksheets. Grab one of those, If there's any yoga programs, if there's... Yoga's incredible, and I think a lot of us often think of the physical respects, but I've learned that there's a lot of philosophical, and avidya is one of the terms associated with ego, with yoga, and that's another practice where you focus on your mat. Your mat is you. That's your world, and you do these moves to help you in a metaphorical way move through other things that are going on in your life. It's to distance yourself and find yourself. So there are a ton of different avenues. But I think if nothing else, you always have with you that split second. If you don't have a yoga mat and you don't have the book, well, you've got laughter, and I'm pretty sure you've farted at some point in your life.
Right.
Let's be real.
Right.
So it's like, use that to your advantage and find the humor in any situation. Compare it to a fart. It could even be silent but deadly. Perhaps it's your own internal struggle that's happening.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to get toxic too.
Yeah.
So it's like I think that comparison it's hysterical. I love it.
Yeah,
so that would be one thing that you've always got on you. And then, of course, breathing exercises.
Right.
You know, which it's hard to breathe in a toxic environment.
Absolutely.
So, you know, but that is one of the things we've got to do.
Gas chamber, right?
Right.
Totally.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I'd say finding works that resonate with you. But if nothing else, just acknowledging that you have your own. You have yourself, and you have the ability to find humor in things. So why not just see it as this illusion happening around you? Find the humor in the attitudes and the faces that people make, and the grunting and the all this stuff, this commotion going on around. Just observe it in a non-judgmental way, and see the humor in it. This is the humor experience.
Right.
You know.
Right. If we're not going to laugh at this life, then.
Well,
what's the point of it?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't know.
It was probably called Laugh, and then somehow it got transcribed inaccurately to life. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Well, we're about to go on break.
Great.
When we get back, I want to kind of expand this even further now and kind of to a macro level, talking about the situation with the VA and the veterans, and we've kind of talked a little bit about that, but kind of what your stance is. So we'll be talking about that when we get back, and you are listening to At Ease.
Everyone's going to need an attorney at some point in life. I'm no different. Hey everyone, it's James from Vets On. Whether it was my last will and testament before deployment or my ongoing custody battle for my children during my divorce, I needed help, so I lawyered up. If you need help, I urge you to contact Capstrom Law Firm. Capstrom Law Firm in Springfield, Missouri services clients throughout the state in criminal law, personal injury, and family law. With over 13 years practicing law, Tom Capstrom understands both law and court procedures and how stressful they can be. Let Tom Capstrom Law Firm and his dedicated staff take the stress and worry out of a difficult situation by calling him today. We feel so strong about the work that Tom and his staff are doing that he'll be a monthly guest on the show. Tom is a veteran and a listener, for God's sake, so you know the guy is solid and will fight for you. Give Tom a call today by calling 417-864-0552 or email Tom at capstromlaw.com. And don't forget to tell him that Vets On sent you.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertising.
Would your goal be to get you and your family out of debt? I can show you how thousands of people and families are doing just that. This is a business plan made simple. We offer everything from weight loss products to green cleaning solutions. Whether you're interested in making it a full-time or part-time opportunity to become debt-free, or if you are just sick and tired of being sick and tired, call Jamie at 602-295-9969. That's 602-295-9969.
Breaker 19. How about that bandage? You got some ears on, son?
Have you ever wanted to be a truck driver? If so, pay attention. If not, pay attention anyway. Southwest Truck Driver Training offers everything you need to get started. You can get hired before you begin training. They've got GI Bill approved training facilities, day, night, or weekend programs to fit your busy schedule. If you have any questions, no sweat. They've got veteran supportive campuses with veterans on staff to serve you. And on top of that, they have lifetime job placement assistance. Put the pedal to the metal. Call Southwest Truck Driver Training today.
Do you need an extra push to start your day? Well, then tune in to At Ease Radio. At Ease Radio is a show that explores tough questions in an open and fun forum. The program also engages hard-hitting issues concerning veterans' physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. The show airs every Tuesday from 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Vets On Media Network. At Ease Radio is hosted by Jesse James, a combat veteran of Afghanistan, so he knows the problems that veterans face every day. Jesse provides you guidance each and every week to be a better you. So tune into yourself each week by tuning into At Ease Radio. Go to vetsonmedia.com for show details.
Welcome back to At Ease Radio. Thanks for tuning in. Matt, I wanted to kind of get your stance on all of this, or what.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I guess first and foremost, like before the show started, right? I'm setting the computer up and getting everything ready to go, and I asked Jesse. I was like, okay, so what am I titling the show today? And he looks at me with a straight face and says, "Farts and Egos." And I'm chuckling to myself. I'm like, oh, okay, some little fourth grade humor. I'm all about that. I'm cool. I'm down for that. And then, of course, the show actually starts. It's like, no, farts and egos are similar because I'm like, holy shit, no, this is what we're actually talking about today.
Comparative study on farts and egos,
right.
Yes.
And, I didn't get it to start with, but, like, as you two have been talking, I just think it's been a really interesting kind of way to look at it, I guess. It's, I would almost equate it to that, there's another, phrase you'll see around every so often. It's like opinions are like buttholes. Everybody's got one, right? So I don't know. I think that your approach to it has been it's unique, and I personally I like humor in serious topics.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because serious topics can be really, really dry and boring to read.
Yeah.
Interesting,
that's what
but
I
difficult to trudge through. But I don't know. I don't know. Kind of like it's just it's an interesting way to look at it, and it's easy to digest. And who doesn't like immature illustrations to go along with everything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Totally.
Cool. Thank you.
There's my 3 cents. Ow. That's a table.
And so, we're gonna open up the phone lines just in case you guys have a question for Stevie or for me. The number is 602-399-7787. But also, Stevie, so what do you think? How do you think that this knowledge can, looking at veterans today or issues that veterans are having or what's in the news? What's your kind of viewpoint or take on it with coming from your perspective?
I do have to be honest, and because this is, it's all about being honest,
right,
honest
absolutely.
Communication with where we're at, because it's been less than a year, and I really left somewhat bitter, and I started this journey, and I'm just now, this very moment, becoming open to the idea of revisiting the news and things surrounding military, because for so long I couldn't even, up until today, I just haven't even thought about entertaining any media or anything surrounding it, because my ego would latch on to any identity I could find there and see how it relates to me.
Right.
As a matter of fact, yesterday I believe there was like something in a Facebook news feed, and it had mentioned that some, there's petitions, there's some 57,000 veterans that have yet to get their initial assessments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been over 90 days, and so this big audit happened and people want answers and stuff, and immediately my ego goes to places of how long it took for certain services in the military and medical and whatever, and it's so easy for the ego to quickly identify with either self-righteous or self-loathing, like, oh, well, aren't we glad we got out of the military, but at the same time it's like, well, now wait a minute, let me come at this from myself, from my truth, and I'm less irritated when I go, you know what, I understand people have a lot to do, and it's not the VA, it's not, I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt, and that's easy to do when you're coming from a place
where
that's
you're not
absent of ego.
Right.
It's easy to have compassion and to go, you know what, maybe it's a paper thing, we all have typos and technical issues. Who knows? But the thing is, you're not as irritated when you're coming from a place of just self-acknowledgement and awareness. And also, though, in that knowledge comes the profound understanding that we have all the answers.
Right.
And I will say, a very large part, actually a catalyst in all of this transition for my husband Brandon and I, was eating clean. And we did that because that was what he was learning in his studies as he transitioned out. We started eating clean. We started watching documentaries around eating clean.
Right.
And those documentaries depict certain agencies and things that we typically believed in. You know,
Right.
you'd like to think that the things on the shelves are not bad for you, or that they're not made with petroleum and all these other things. You start to learn more.
Right.
There was this innate feeling of needing to feed my soul knowledge. I wasn't eating clean and watching documentaries to feed my ego anymore.
Right.
I was feeding my soul. There was this grasping of like truth, capital T truth, everywhere I could get it. And what resonated with me stuck, you know? And so we continued down this path of eating clean and reading and writing documentaries. And then I wound up not even going to the VA upon completion of our service because we did a lot of self-healing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know how to, there's no way to say it, you know, and even right now, the ego, you know, in my head is kind of like, don't go there. You might, you know, ruffle
Piss
some
somebody
feathers.
off, yeah.
But, you know, I can't deny it. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to deny it. There is a capital K knowing. It's something that is undeniable that when we eat clean, my family and I, okay, we'll just say my husband and kids and I, our attitudes change. Our zeal for life changes. Our compassion changes. We're not in this funk, this toxic environment. And even though we have egos and we have judgments, like yesterday, seeing that news feed, I'm able to consciously crop dust. I'm able to release that
Right.
without making it a big stink, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, so it's like there's just so many things that we can do, not relying solely upon agencies and things like that. Of course, that's an extra avenue, great. But when the going gets tough and you get frustrated with services or lack thereof or hang-ups, know that you have everything within yourself. We have that. We have to start feeding our soul.
Of being happy in this moment, regardless of our circumstances. We always have the choice of, and I know that sounds harder. You know, if I heard that when I was back in my place where you know, when I heard the news, I mean, it just triggered me, and it was like it hurt. It hurt to. I mean, it hurt to hear anything about veterans because I just felt like, you know, like I didn't want to be a part of that. And so, but that was my ego. It was my ego is the stinking thinking. And as I've practiced and learned and you know, started to eat cleaner and to take some control back and to realize that ultimately I am the one that is in charge of my life. I'm the one that's in charge of my happiness. If the VA isn't satisfying me, then fine, I'll go look for something else that will, you know, or I'll find it in myself first, and I'll find that happiness here and that choice. There's a really good, God, I can't remember his name, but he was a Holocaust survivor, and they were in. He wrote a couple of books, and I can't think of the book. I should probably find out.
Elie Wiesel, is that the guy you're talking about?
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Matt.
No sweat.
Do you know the story?
Which story are we talking about?
The one where he's like so skinny and like they're like starving. They basically bring a bowl of soup a day, and they're all just like animals getting to it, you know. And he's just like, "What are we doing? What, you know, like?" And he, you know, because we're just fighting and we all hate each other. We're, you know, trying to get in. So what he did is he took this little piece of bread that they give him, his bowl of soup, and he broke it up into little pieces, and he like sat down and he offered it. And he offered it to all the other inmates, and they like came by, and they just broke down and like cried at his generosity and at seeing what they had become. And so then they all started to do that. They all started sharing their food. They all started, you know. And then a guard was so enamored with their practice that you know with what they were doing is that he started feeding them more stuff, you know.
Oh, wow.
And then when the Americans came. And you know, and like to get everybody, they rounded the guard up that had helped him and hit him so that he wouldn't get hauled off to jail. And so I mean, it's a redemption story, and it's even in that circumstances there was a choice. There was a choice of what am I going to be, you know, like who am I going to be as a person? Who am I going to show up as? And so being able to identify your ego versus your true self, your authentic self, is so important.
Yeah.
And I love coming at it from your perspective of the ego is like farts, because it brings it in humor and it's easy to remember. I mean, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's exciting and it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's potent, if you will.
Potent.
Yeah, I mean, it can absolutely be an introductory or on a whim. It might
Yeah.
come out of nowhere, out
Yeah.
of thin air. You
Right,
know, it
right.
might just hit you, and you go, oh, okay, that analogy, I see it right now, and it is comical. You know, this whole human experience, it's hilarious.
Right. And so taking that to, again, back to the situation with VA and stuff, what are some lessons or some farts that we can laugh at about, you know, the whole system that we're in right now? I mean,
Let's see. Well, you know, we all have our own unique essence, our
Yeah.
own brand, if you will.
yeah.
So no different than you and I have our own personal struggles. Whoever's sitting behind that desk processing that paperwork has their own struggles,
Right.
you know. I think that
You know, that's such a good point, and I've always felt like, because I've known a few people that work for the VA, and it seems like bureaucratic, and it just seems like really not that different from being in the military. I mean, but even maybe a little worse, and where it's just like it doesn't seem like it's a super enjoyable place to work either, you know. And so how can a place that's very stressful to work at also be a place that's supposed to help stress, you know? That's kind of been my opinion.
I think too, the quick to blame,
Yeah.
not to claim, just because, you know, how often it's so easy. I mean, all of us right now could probably envision at least one person in our life who's a big storyteller.
Yeah.
Everything's a soap opera. It's always about them, you know. But how much of that do we acknowledge as our own ego identifying with parts of that story?
Mhm.
Even if we're not experiencing the same thing, is it our ego that's annoyed by that person's ranting?
Right.
There's this
and
ability.
are we giving our power away by letting them upset us in the way that we're letting them upset us?
Right, yeah.
Right.
There's kind of that saying too, like if you're letting someone be in your thoughts, they're getting free rent space. You know,
Right,
they're not
right.
paying and they're occupying all that time and space. So that concept too, like spending all this time bashing the VA or making assumptions or perceptions on what we believe is going on, that it's a lack of work ethic or organizational skills, or that people are vacationing on their yachts, or all the other things that I've thought of. Because I wouldn't be able to make those assumptions or even bring these ideas, these thoughts to light right now if I didn't already have these perceptions myself. So owning whatever our beliefs are, whatever mind chatter is happening, owning that and observing it in a non-judgmental way, not being upset at ourselves for having those thoughts. We just have to realize the GPS, it comes with the car. It is what it is. It comes with these vessels, and we have to learn to live with it, not for it. You know, it's really, if we can just embrace that, perhaps that's, you know, some God humor, if you will, if that's your God of understanding, if you believe in that, you know, who knows? I don't know any of the answers. I just know that I keep finding that there's some things I cannot deny, and that they all point back to an inner awareness. There's this like knowing that, and peace that just comes from letting a lot of this worldly stuff go, and identifying that the ego is part of the worldly experience. It's separate and distinct from who we are at our souls, our spirits, or whatever that is, whatever word you want to give that identifies with who you are, separate from this physical body.
Right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Wow. Thank you. So how can we get a hold of your book? Or
It is on Amazon now, and it's also available in Kindle edition.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. You know, it's like I have to bring this up too. It's comical because you do something with the intention of helping people.
Right.
And then, you know, my mind keeps going back and forth. You know, my ego is kind of like, well, should we sell? How do you sell? How do you market? You know? So that's my own personal struggle. So thank you for asking, because, you know, the idea of putting it out there myself is just kind of, you want to stay humble, you know? But at the same time, it's like, this is freaking funny. Let's get it out there and hope that some other folks, can lighten up their own enlightenment. So thank you for asking, Jesse. There's definitely the link on all of our Facebook, Twitter, and I'll put the links if it's easier, just on maybe some website or something with you.
Yeah.
So your followers can go directly there, make it a little easier. But it is available. It's Egos Are Like Farts. It's on Amazon Kindle as well. You can buy it from Create Space. And then I'll be doing some book signings here in the near future because that fell in my lap. I'm just so unbelievably blown away, pun intended, that so many folks have supported, and then you too, Jesse, just allowing me the opportunity to come on, you and Matt both. Thank you so much. And Adam, it's just what a great way to spend a day, like just consciously crop dusting and putting information out there in hopes that other people can laugh a little bit and live for the present moment. That's all we have. That's all we truly have.
All right.
And if we can be in that moment absent of any perceptions,
absent of any stinking thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Great.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Stevie. And we will have. I'll be writing up an article about this, and then I will kind of put those links up.
Cool.
So if you are
send
interested,
them to you. Awesome.
it'll be up on the Vets on Media website and where you can get the book. And thank you so much, Stevie, for coming in.
Thank you. I just want to thank whoever's listening too, especially those that have served.
Mm-hmm.
That was a tough couple of years. So anyone that's served, past, present, thinking about going in, thanks for your service. It definitely will be a selfless service. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And thank you, Matt, for doing the boards.
No sweat.
You got anything for us for next week?
No. We'll be here.
We'll be here. All right. Cool, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. Next week, I said that originally that this was going to be a 10-week thing with me and Stevie. We're working on that. So we're going to be flexible with that. But next week is going to be another amazing show. It's always an amazing show here at Ease. And thanks for tuning in. And until then, as always, at ease.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the red marks we watched were so gallantly streaming, young rocket trembling, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land under the brave? You're the home of the brave. Cause we are the brave. Yes, we are the brave. We'll fight you in name, the name of the brave. We are the US of A. For those unaware, that flag is still there. It's our future to save. This land of the brave, the US of A. Oh, say, just that star, spangled banner.